Wow. I can honestly say I've never done a picture of Lincoln. I don't think I have I? No, I can't remember of ever doing a drawing of Lincoln. Yeah, it was a lady, so now my head's in the gutter.
It's okay. So we do have a those are some great stories, and you might have some more stories about this next topic. Now,
Alright.
usually we always cover now a main topic of the show, and I pick something kind of fascinating that's out there that most people maybe not may not be aware of. It could be a history thing. It could be some crazy story.
Uh-huh.
But the backstory of this is kind of funny. Um, Now I
Ooh,
would assume this is the most famous hat in the world, and that's
right.
Lincoln's top hat.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why this topic has came up is because I've had some discussions with my family that whenever you look up Lincoln, you when you think Lincoln in your head, you think his top hat, right? That
Right.
may he's always wearing it, right?
Right.
However, when you Google search him or do anything like that, there isn't a lot of photos with him in the hat,
Hmm.
because he never really took photos in the hat, or he would never really when it was more of a gimmick. Wasn't really like when he did speeches and things like that. He would. So we're gonna go into all that, but and the
Ooh.
history of his hat and like why he chose to wear it and sort of. I thought it was just an interesting topic to
Huh.
kind of go over. Um, so like I mean, this is one of our greatest presidents ever, right? I would say at least not
Mhm.
the best, right? What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm the kind of person that's like, hey, a lot of stuff gets stories made
Yeah,
afterwards,
yeah.
and then,
Well,
I mean,
I mean, he's
but for the image of America, yes, he would be like a great president. If you got on somebody like Razor Fist, he would completely disagree with you.
probably, but
But yeah, yeah,
he did combine he brought our country back together. But he
right.
was also was one of the tallest. He was 6'4",
Mm.
or the tallest president. Did you know that? Did you know he was 6'4"?
Yeah, I knew he was a tall guy. Yeah, he was up from Illinois, so
Yeah.
get
So
your
he
tall
would,
boys up.
obviously tower over people then. He would tower over people today. So when he wore the hat, it literally made him a little bit more taller. He would stand
Right,
out of the crowd. Um, so he wore this hat, he did wear it, just not as often as most people think. He wore it, around in peacetime and wartime, and occasionally formal and informer. He also wore it, the night he was assassinated. He just didn't have it on.
mm,
So yeah. Um, Basically, you can find this hat. One of them is in the Smithsonian. Likely, it's a descendant from some 17th century steeple hat, like or a sugar loaf, or most people in the 18th century or the 17th had these type of hats. Kind of see them all about. You don't really see top hats anymore, really,
yeah, it's a
as far
shame.
as the fashion sense. It's more of a kind of a gag, right? Kind of a funny thing.
Yeah,
Um, Now, like I said, it did get some popular in 1800s. There was books about it. It became an impressive symbol of prestige. So, like if you were a politician or if you were a cool YouTuber, right back then, you had a top hat.
wow.
Uh, so, but yeah, if you were some type of prestige it was symbolic. So if you had a top hat in the 1800s, you were considered okay. You're pretty well known, like especially if it was a nice looking one.
Right, right.
Were a good. Um, Not really like I've seen some top hats where you have cat in the hat. Nothing like that. This was solid
Yeah,
black.
something,
Right.
not excessively tall, but somewhere,
Yeah.
they gave you just a, you know
Right. So basically, nowadays, envisioning Lincoln without a hat is really hard. But how he began wearing it remains unclear. Some people say historians that he did it just as a gimmick during his political run. In those days, he really was seen without his hat. He traditionally seven or made him. It was either 7 or 8 inches high. So obviously, it made him a lot taller if he was 6'4". There's a good photo of him standing next to there in the Civil War. Look how tall he is, right? He kind of like stood out. So Lincoln's vision was often graded a bit as if hat worn. perfection, perhaps intended to suit his frontier image. So he also, when he wore it, he didn't like always wear a fresh new one. It was either torn or weathered,
Right,
anything like that.
right.
So it was like something to call back to his time in Indiana, right? When he was out there doing the frontier life. Um, I guess one of the first times Carl Search first met him with Lincoln in the railroad car in 1850s on the on the way to one of the future president's debates with Stephen Douglas. Search described Lincoln's tailcoat, so his jacket, as a shabby and his top hat as crumbled. So he looked kind of disheveled. He was kind of a disheveled looking person. So even though it was like a prestige thing that he wore, he was just kind of looked kinda messy when he wore it. Um, he just kinda like this yeah, that's could you imagine right now if a president was, like, walking around and they're usually kind of well taken care of, or they're kinda dressed up nice, or
Yeah, I
politicians are
mean,
really sharp to the 9, right? They're not really disheveled.
well, I mean, yeah, yeah, like, well, that does kind of bring up, look at the, what's his name from, the Ukraine? Ka Kaczynski?
Yeah,
Kaczynski?
he
What's
doesn't
his name?
really wear a lot of,
And that's
suits
done
or
on purpose, though, in my opinion. It's to
it
show that,
is,
like, he said,
most likely. Yeah.
"Oh, I'm in such dire straits. Help me. All I got is money for street clothes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Another
This is a little
$1,000,000,
different.
please."
He still wore his suit, but it was more of,
Right, right.
disheveled looking, worn, like,
Well, it gave you
vintage
the
stuff.
sense of being, like, a working man, and that's what he was
Mhm.
known for being a hard worker, and, uh,
Yep.
like, I grew up in Indiana as well. Grew up in North Carolina and Indiana, half and half, and we were actually pretty close to Lincoln State Park, or Lincoln State what was it? Lincoln State Park or Lincoln State Memorial? I can't remember which one it was, but there was, like, their place where you could go, had, like, all the old time feel to it, like, "Ooh, this is where Lincoln grew up," and, um
Oh, cool.
yeah, yeah. I remember always like because we got the coins from there, and when I was a little
Mhm.
kid, we went
Did you
there
buy a
a
top
couple times.
hat?
I was tempted, but, too
That's
bad
the thing there. He's always yeah, yeah.
yeah.
He's
When I
always,
put it on, it just went right down to my nose.
oh, okay. Well, must have been too big for you. Um, so when Lincoln gave his one of his famous speeches at the Cooper Institute in New York, some observers were quoted as saying that his hat looked bashed in, like someone broke it in the top there. But this is unlikely, as the photographer Harold Harzer point out that Lincoln, that very day of his speech, bought a new hat. So this time he bought a new hat, but some people said he was wearing kind of a it like maybe he crumpled it, maybe he bought a new one and kind of roughed it up a little bit. No one really knows what type of hat he really wore, or like what um, when he wore it. But if you notice in this drawing, this is another artist rendition of that speech. A lot of the top hats are in the crowd and they're holding it, right, or they're wearing it. But if you see Lincoln in the middle there, he's not. So
Ah,
he never wore it during speeches, or he just he kind of wore it like going to a speech or going to an
mm,
event.
maybe it was a
Um,
matter of etiquette for him, I don't know.
yeah, it probably was. There's that manners, right, where you always take your hat off when you go inside or you do something. There's that type of thing that people used to do. But apparently,
Yeah,
yeah. So he gave this, he gave it. He always wore the hat though in the crowd to look like he stood over everyone else. So you can literally
right.
say, okay, that's Lincoln. There he is. But he really didn't. Like I said, seems like he mostly wore it to stand out, or
It
kind
wa
of
it
yeah,
was his form of peacocking.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
you were absolutely right. So some people, we
yeah,
have a beard, or you have
yeah,
curly hair with your beard, or you know,
or
people
or you
acknowledge you of what you look like, and that's
or where you wear your pants where your underwear shows, saggy pants, yeah.
sure, sure, yeah, we can do that.
Or now you get those big rings in your
Mhm,
when you
yeah.
you gotta do something to make yourself look unique.
So
Whoa, nice
yeah, so
illustration.
yeah, so some people started picking up on this, that he was wearing this hat. So Lincoln's top hats were not always of the same design. At first inauguration in 1860, he wore the lower silk plush. So he had different styles of hats. Um, by the start of the second term in 1864, he was again wearing the stovepipe one. Um, and a style that would continue for a decade or more after his assassination. So a lot of people wore those type of hats. Lincoln
Oh,
Stovetap made him an easy mark for a characterist, and many drawings have survived in which the hat is in the viewer. So there's some examples of an artist drawing of Lincoln and his hat.
wow. I can honestly say I've never done a picture of Lincoln. I don't think I have I? No, I can't remember ever doing a drawing of Lincoln. That's something I might have to remedy.
Yeah, maybe you can throw in the hat or
Yeah,
not the hat.
I would
So
throw in the hat.
yeah, so but before we continue, but cartoonists weren't the only ones that had their the ones who found it easy to spot him with his hat. So, like, you can imagine you can spot him in the crowd, but it seems like cartoonists really picked up on it. Especially back then, there wasn't really photos of presidents and gifs and like memes, right?
No memes. Yeah,
These are kind of the memes of the day, right?
right.
People would do
Well,
drawings
cartoonists
of
were the original memers.
correct, and they would make fun
Satire.
of
Yeah.
yeah, they would make fun
Yep.
of people. So that again, that's what they would do here. They would kind of make sure the hat was included, even though he maybe wasn't wearing it at the time
Mhm.
whenever they saw him. So you did see it a lot of it. Now, like I said, it did make him stand out a lot in the crowd. So during the Civil War, so in August 1864, Lincoln was on horseback on his way to the soldiers' home about 3 miles northeast of the White House, where he had the use of a stone cottage in the summer months. Um, a would-be assassin fired from the near road, shooting the stovetop pipe hat off Lincoln's head. Soldiers who found it said there was a bullet hole through the crown. This incident gave rise to the popular notion that the hat saved Lincoln's life. So he was almost assassinated on that day. Kind of a warning sign, right?
Right, right.
But it the hat saved him because it went through, the brim there. That's pretty and
That's
I
crazy.
mean,
I hadn't heard that
ye
story.
yeah, it's pretty interesting, right? And, again, if you see this picture drawn here, he's got his hat, he's on a horse, so he's already 6'4", he's on a horse, and then you see this under 7-inch. You could definitely find him on a battlefield.
Yeah, it's something that, like, maybe his advisor didn't do his job well. It's like, "Hey, you know what? Maybe you might wanna not stand out so much if you're going to a
Yeah,
war zone."
yeah. And it's
Yeah.
and there was a it's they didn't really say it here in this article that I got some of this information from, but there were some people. They didn't really have Secret Service back in the day, but the
Mm.
people who were around him um, weren't too fond of him wearing that hat because
Right. Of
he
course.
stood out. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
It's
sure
like him
nowadays.
putting on a yeah.
Yeah, I'm
It's like
sure
a president
nowadays.
going around nowadays with, like, a siren on their head. You know,
Yeah,
"Woo."
they don't do that, right? They don't stand out too much.
Right.
If you ever seen a president um, motorcade, they're literally locked and tied in that thing. They don't really out in the open. I think if they do go out in the open, there's people watching them, so
Oh,
it's
yeah.
very, very hard for anyone to do anything. Um, so the better surmise is that the hat made Lincoln easy to spot in the crowd. In the early 1864, at the Battle of Fort Stevens, he stood out in the battlements wearing his trademark hat, making him, in the Kyle Sandburg's phrase, too tall,
Mm.
too tall a target for the Confederates. So, until warned by a Union officer to get down. So he just stood out. Look, I'm here.
Yeah,
Try
what you
your
gonna do
best.
about it?
Yeah, and he made, like I said, that leads to that other story I mentioned where they were a little nervous that he wore it.
Yeah, it kinda reminds me of the scene from 1989 Batman where Joker's just standing in the middle of the road. "Come on. Come on."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is
Yeah.
exactly right. So on the night that he died, he did dress in the theater in the silk top hat. He had the 7-inch one from the Washington hat maker J.W. J.Y. Davis, which he had added a black silk mourning band in memory of his son. So his son passed away pretty right around that time. So when Lincoln was shot, the hat was on the floor beside his chair. So he took the hat
Should've had it
off,
up. Yep.
yeah, and set it down. Mhm.
Could have saved him. Now,
And
why is John Wilkes Booth jumping out of there with a knife in his hand? I've never heard about this.
is that a great picture?
Yeah.
So this is another artist rendition of what happened at the time. So,
It just looks like Lincoln's got a headache there. Oh, man. My head.
again, there was no video, no photo really, and people weren't just randomly taking pictures of everybody. This is what they thought when people describe the event. This is the artist rendition. I thought you would get a kick out of these little drawings.
Yeah, yeah. This is crazy because I guess this must have happened just right the guy drew it, like, right afterwards because obviously he got the wrong, you know, m information, word of mouth,
Mhm.
rumors kinda, like, came to or maybe this is actually what really happened
Yeah,
and
maybe it
everything
was.
else was a lie.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I like the guy down
Maybe
at
it
the
was a
bottom. He's just like
maybe
looks
it was
like
in a
he's cheering on. Maybe I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah. "Hey, who stopped my song?" Or maybe the guy with the flute shot a little dart at him. I don't know, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, maybe. No other president is so firmly connected to our imaginations with an item. I would believe that's true.
Hmm.
Lincoln alone is remembered for what he
Yeah.
wore. Hats were important to Lincoln. They protected him against insolent weather. Served as a storage bins for important papers he stuck inside their lining, and further, yeah, great height advantage over other men. So he looked towering already, but it was like another way of saying here I come. You're going to be
Yeah,
intimidated by me.
right.
Lincoln's taste for hats also gave us the remarkable, durable image of our most remarkable president. Lincoln remains a giant in our memories and looms even taller. So, like,
Stovepipe hat. Hmm.
yeah, stovepipe hat. Yeah, there you go. There's some Lincolns with their hat.
Yeah, that guy from the right, the second from the right, he's a pretty tall fella there.
I would assume that's probably what Lincoln looked like, right? He was very
Yeah, yeah.
tall, very lanky, and he had this extra hat that.
It's what I grew up in Indiana, right? Southern Indiana, and my aunt and uncle lived in a house that used to be a hotel, and
Okay.
apparently, I believe Lincoln stayed there.
Wow.
And, this is I remember them telling me that when I was a kid that, like, there was a lot of famous, like, it was a pretty, like, on the high end of the hotel. It was a really, really nice house. Um, and, yeah, but my uncle who lived there, he looked like Lincoln. He was like a shorter version of him, but it looked just like him. And he just so happened to be a history teacher himself. Died I
Okay.
think passed away when he was, like, 91 years old, and he was still working as a substitute history teacher.
Wow.
There you go.
That's pretty cool.
Got a little
That's
story for
really
you about everything,
you
JT. Just
do.
yeah.
So, there you go. That's the main topic of the night was the
I
top
would
hat.
say if we're speaking about hats, another person whose hat image of him in a hat would be iconic would be Napoleon.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah,
He just wasn't a US president. So,
he tried. Tried.
so